Good evening, and welcome again. Tonight we will return to a time when the gods of Olympus were not yet born, when Zeus, the Lord of Thunder, was only a possibility. This is the story of a time when the earth itself was in pain and the sky was a cruel ruler. Sit back, close your eyes, and imagine. The Cyclops and the 100-handed giants imprisoned deep within the earth. Their cries rose through the layers of rock. Each scream pierced Gaia's heart. Gaia, the great earth, could take it no longer. She knew that Uranus had to be stopped. So one silent night, when there was no moon in the sky and the stars seemed to have dimmed with fear, Gaia created a strange metal from deep within her body. It was hard, black, and sharp. She made a giant sickle out of it. Then she called his Titan children. One by one they gathered in the deep caves of the earth. Oceanus came, but remained silent. Hyperion came, but turned away. Coeus, Creus, Iapetus, none dared. For Uranus was the sky itself. To stand against him was to stand against the entire universe. But one stepped forward, Cronus, the youngest Titan, the most cunning, the most ambitious. Instead of fear, there was fire in his eyes. "Mother," he said, "I will do it." Gaia gave him the black sickle. At that moment, the first rebellion in history began. Night fell. Uranus descended upon Earth as usual. The sky spread its starry body and covered Gaia. But this time, Cronus waited in the darkness, silently, patiently, waiting for the right time. And when the moment came, he leaped. In a flash, the black sickle tore the sky. The universe trembled. The seas churned. The mountains trembled. And for the first time, Uranus's roar filled the sky. Thus ended the age of the sky, and the age of the Titans began. Cronus was now the new ruler. But power does not always bring peace, because before he left, Uranus had made a prophecy. As you overthrew your father, so one day your son will overthrow you. At first, Cronus laughed. He thought such a thing would never happen. He was the most powerful being in all of creation. But prophecies are strange. They wait, slowly, silently, and one day they come true.
Cronus was now the ruler of the entire world. Sitting on the throne of the Titans, he looked around. The sky was under his control, the sea was in his obedience, and the earth silently accepted his rule. For a long time, peace reigned. The rivers flowed at their natural pace, the mountains stood like silent sentinels, the stars shone in the sky every night. It seemed that the universe had finally found a stable ruler. But behind the peace, a voice kept echoing in Cronus's mind. It was the last prophecy of his father Uranus. One day, your children will overthrow you. During the day, he tried to forget it, but when night came, the words would come back. In the darkness, it seemed that every star in the sky whispered the same warning. Over time, that fear grew. Finally, Cronus married his sister Rhea. Rhea was gentle, wise, and patient. She loved the creatures of the earth. She loved to hear the sound of the wind. The birth of new life brought her joy. But fear still lingered in Cronus's heart. A few days later, Rhea gave birth to her first child, a beautiful baby girl. She was named Hestia, the future guardian of the hearth of the gods. Rhea hugged her with joy. But Cronus looked at the child and saw something else. He saw the possibility of prophecy. He saw a threat to his throne and made a terrible decision. He picked up the child. He stared for a moment. Then he swallowed the child whole. Rhea screamed in horror, but it was too late. Hestia had disappeared. The universe seemed to freeze for a moment. Cronus believed he had defeated the future, but defeating the future was not so easy. Time moved on. Rhea's second child was born, Demeter, the future goddess of agriculture and fertility. But her fate was the same. Cronus swallowed her. Then came Hera, then Hades, then Poseidon. Every time the same thing happened. Every time Rhea's heart broke. Every time Cronus became a little more afraid. Because the more children he swallowed, the more he realized that what he was doing to escape the prophecy was scaring him even more. Meanwhile, the children imprisoned deep in the earth were still waiting. The stars above the sky were watching silently, and fate was patiently waiting for her time. Finally, Rhea became pregnant again. This time, her sixth child would be born. She knew that if she did nothing, this child would also suffer the same fate. So one dark night, she went deep into the earth, to her mother, to Gaia. Gaia heard everything. There was 1,000 ages of wisdom in her eyes. She knew that the time had come, because sometimes the biggest changes in the universe begins with the cry of a newborn baby. And that baby's name will be Zeus.
Rhea was pregnant again. This time, her sixth child would be born. She knew that if she did nothing, this child would also suffer the same fate. That is why one dark night she went deep into the earth to her mother, Gaia. Gaia heard everything. Her eyes had the wisdom of 1,000 ages. She knew that the time had come, because sometimes the greatest changes in the universe begin with the cry of a newborn baby, and that baby would be named Zeus. In the dead of night, while Cronus slept peacefully on his throne, Rhea secretly left the earth and set off for the distant island of Crete. That island was surrounded by mystery, high mountains, dense forests, and deep caves. Very few gods traveled there. Gaia showed Rhea the way to a secret cave. The baby was born in that cave. At the moment of birth, the wind stopped. The distant sea seemed to fall silent for a moment. The stars shone brighter. Gaia understood that the wheel of prophecy had begun to turn. Rhea hugged her child to her chest. There was joy in her eyes, but with that joy was mixed fear, because she knew that if Cronus found out about this child, everything would be over. So Gaia brought a huge stone. Rhea wrapped it in cloth and made it look like a newborn baby. Then she took the stone and returned to Cronus. Cronus snatched the child away as soon as he saw it. There was no illusion in his eyes, only fear. Fear of prophecy. Without a moment's hesitation, he swallowed it. And he thought that this time he had defeated his fate. But he did not know he had swallowed a stone. And the real child was then lying safely in a secret cave on the island of Crete. In that cave, a group of warriors called Curetes were assigned to protect Zeus. Whenever the child cried, they would clash their shields and swords against each other. The sound of their weapons would drown out Zeus's cries, so that Cronus would not hear anything. Zeus was milked by a miraculous goat, Amalthea. Her milk had strange powers. Days passed, months passed, and years came. And Zeus began to grow rapidly. He was not like other children. From childhood, he had extraordinary powers. Sometimes he would climb the mountaintop and stare at the sky for hours. Sometimes he would hear the roar of the sea as if someone were calling him. Sometimes when a storm broke, he would feel the thunder was the language of his own heart. He didn't know why, but he had a strange relationship with the sky. Meanwhile, far away, Cronus still reigned on his throne. He believed that all his children had been destroyed. Little did he know, fate was slowly approaching him. And in that secret cave on the island of Crete, someone was growing up who would one day change the history of the gods and titans. Zeus was still young, but the time was approaching. Soon he would learn his true identity. And then a war would begin that would shake the sky, the earth, and the sea.
Years passed. In that secret cave on the island of Crete, Zeus had now grown into a powerful young man. His strength was extraordinary. He could leap to the top of mountains, easily tame wild animals, and on stormy nights it seemed as if the thunder was the echo of his own voice. But one question always haunted his mind. Who am I? Why am I hidden in this cave? One day, as the sun was setting, Gaia appeared before him. The great mother of the world slowly approached her. Zeus bowed his head in reverence. Gaia was silent for a moment. Then she said, "The time has come for you to know the truth." She told Zeus everything about Cronus, about his brothers and sisters, about Uranus's prophecy, and that terrible truth. His 5 siblings were still alive, but imprisoned inside Cronus's belly. Zeus was silent for a long time. Anger, sadness, and determination rose together in his chest. He understood for the first time why he had been hidden, why fate had kept him alive. Gaia placed her hand on his shoulder and said, "You cannot win this war with strength alone. You must also gain wisdom." That night, Zeus set out. His goal was to find someone who was known to be the wisest of the gods and titans. Her name was Metis, the goddess of wisdom and cunning. After many days of walking, he found her. Metis listened carefully to Zeus. Then he smiled softly and said, "If you want to defeat Cronus, you must first free your brothers and sisters." He brewed a magical drink. The drink, sparkling with golden light, was no ordinary one. If he drank it, Cronus would be forced to vomit everything he had swallowed. Zeus took the drink in his hand. Now there was no turning back. The most important moment of fate awaits him ahead. He slowly sets off towards the kingdom of Cronus, and far away, unnoticed, the future seems to be waiting. Because very soon, father and son will meet for the first time, and that meeting will change the history of the entire universe.
The kingdom of Cronus was at peace. At least that was how it seemed from the outside. The king of the Titans sat on his vast throne, surrounded by a crowd of loyal Titans. He believed that his enemies had long been defeated. He had defeated the prophecy. He had devoured his children, and now there was no rival to his power. But fate was moving silently. At that moment, an unknown young man entered the palace. His face was calm. His eyes held a strange confidence. No one knew that this young man was Zeus. He kept his identity a secret. On Medes' advice, he entered the palace disguised as a servant of Cronus. Day after day he waited for the right time. Finally, the day came. Cronus organized a grand banquet. The Titans arrived from far and wide. Drinks were being served in golden vessels. Music was playing. The palace was sparkling with light. And Zeus was in charge of serving drinks at that banquet. Zeus slowly walked in front of Cronus. In his hand was the magical drink prepared by Metis. For a moment, time seemed to stop. But Cronus did not doubt anything. He drank the entire drink in one gulp. At first, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, the color of his face changed. He squirmed in discomfort. His huge body began to tremble. The floor shook. The walls began to tremble. The Titans looked at each other in horror. Then,
with a loud roar, Cronus began to vomit. First came the stone that he had swallowed many years ago, thinking it was Zeus. As the stone fell to the ground, the entire palace shook. Then something even more amazing happened. One by one, his children began to come out. First Hestia, then Demeter, then Hera, then Hades, and finally Poseidon. Despite being imprisoned for many ages, they were alive because they were immortal. Taking their first breaths of free air, they looked around in amazement. Cronus could not believe it. His greatest fear had come true. His children had returned. And just then, the mysterious young man stepped forward. He no longer hid his identity. An invisible force seemed to burn around his body. Lightning flashed in his eyes. "I am Zeus." The voice echoed throughout the palace. "I am your son." The palace fell silent. Cronus's eyes widened in surprise. He understood.
the child he had sought to destroy stood before him today, and all attempts to escape the prophecy had failed. Zeus stood by his freed siblings. Hera smiled at him. Poseidon clenched his fist. The fire of vengeance burned in Hades' eyes. For the first time in ages, they stood together, as a family, as a force. And far away, the Cyclops and the 100-handed giants, imprisoned deep in the earth, felt the time for change had come. For a terrible war lay ahead, a war that would last for 10 years, a war that would shake the sky, the sea, and the earth. That war was called the Titanomachy.
Zeus and his siblings knew that it was not possible to defeat the Titans with their own strength alone. Most of the Titans were on Cronus's side. Their power was immense. So Gaia appeared before Zeus again. She said, "If you want victory, free your old allies who are imprisoned deep in the earth." Zeus understood who she was talking about: the Cyclops and the 100-handed giants. Uranus had imprisoned them ages ago. Later, Cronus did not free them either. They are still chained in the dark prison of Tartarus. Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon set off together. They began to descend into the depths of the earth. The lower they descended, the less light they had. Only darkness all around. Silence.
And the cold wind. Finally, they reached the entrance to Tartarus. There stood the terrible dragon-like guards. Their eyes burned like fire. But Zeus was not afraid. A terrible battle began. The dark caves trembled. The rocks began to crumble. Finally, the guards were defeated. Zeus broke the huge iron chains. First, the 3 Cyclopes were freed: Brontes, Steropes, and Argus. In their only eyes the light of hope shone again. Then the 100-handed giants were freed. Each of them had 100 hands and 50 heads. They were so huge that the earth trembled with their movements. After many centuries of captivity, they breathed the free air. The Cyclopes looked at Zeus and said, "You have freed us. We will also give you weapons that have never been created before." They began to work in their vast factory. Day after day the fires burned. Rivers of molten metal flowed. Even the mountains trembled with the blows of their hammers. Finally, they created 3 mighty gifts. For Zeus, thunderbolts that could tear the sky apart. whose light is brighter than the sun, whose blow can destroy mountains. For Poseidon, the trident, which can stir the sea, can cause earthquakes, and control the deepest secrets of the ocean. For Hades, the helmet of invisibility, which no one can see when he wears it. When Zeus first took the thunderbolt in his hand, the sky was covered with black clouds. Lightning flashed in the distance. The thunder echoed throughout the world. At that moment, everyone understood. A new power had been born. Cronus also heard the roar from afar. Unknown fear arose in his heart, because he felt the war that was coming against him would be like no other war before. The age of the Titans had begun to tremble, and the future king of Olympus had received his first weapon. Now there was no way to stop the war. The sky, the sea, and the earth will soon be embroiled in a bloody conflict.
After receiving the thunderbolts made by the Cyclops, Zeus did not wait any longer. The time had come. The time to declare war on the Titans. Zeus raised his thunderbolt to the sky. Black clouds instantly covered the horizon. The wind began to roar, and then the first divine lightning in history ripped through the sky. A mountain peak collapsed with a huge explosion. The Titans were stunned in amazement. They had never seen such power before. Cronus roared. The war began. The earth began to tremble. The sea became turbulent. The sky burned with fire and light. After 10 years of war, the world was tired. The mountains were scarred. The sea was turbulent. Lightning flashed in the sky almost every day. It seemed that the universe itself wanted this war to end. Standing on the peak of Mount Olympus, Zeus looked at his army for the last time. Next to him were Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, Hestia, Cyclops, and the 100-handed giants. Everyone knew. Today's battle would decide everything. At dawn, the two armies faced each other again. Cronus raised his huge weapon and roared. His voice still had that old power, but for the first time, a shadow of fear could be seen in his eyes. He understood. Fate could not be stopped forever. Father and son, representatives of two eras, two rulers. They stared at each other for a moment. Then, Cronus struck first. The earth shook. Zeus dodged the blow. He raised his thunderbolt and looked at the sky. In an instant, black clouds covered the entire sky. Lightning spread across the horizon. Then, Zeus threw the most powerful thunderbolt of his life. The light was so bright that it seemed that a second sun had risen. The thunder roared, shaking the sky and the earth together. Cronus was knocked down by the blow. His weapon fell from his hand. The king of the Titans was defeated for the first time. The battlefield fell silent. Everyone stared in disbelief. Cronus tried to stand up, but he couldn't. His era was over. The Titans began to surrender one.
Then Zeus ordered. The defeated Titans would be imprisoned in Tartarus, that dark abyss from which escape was almost impossible. The iron doors were closed. 100-handed giants were appointed as guards. Thus ended the age of the Titans, and the age of the Olympian gods began. But even though the war was over, the danger was not over, because a terrible monster still lived deep in the earth. So terrible that even the war of the Titans seemed small in front of it. The name of that monster, born from Gaia's anger? Typhon. And his arrival would shake the entire universe once again.